A vote for Trump means your groceries will be cheaper. It'll also bring your grocery bill way down.
President Trump's promise of mass deportations have sent fears to the Central Valley, where migrant farm workers aren't showing up to work. And workers not showing up to work may lead to higher food prices.
Trump's threats of deporting undocumented migrants, his threats of putting them in Guantanamo Bay, is causing a real panic in the Central Valley of California. California is the #1 agriculture producer in America, and the Central Valley is where all the farms are. California produces more oranges than Florida, more peaches than Georgia, and so thousands of workers are necessary in order to pick the citrus off the trees, because right now it's citrus season, and those workers are not showing up.
They're not going to show up for work, and that means crops will remain in the field and not be harvested and probably lost at that point.
The Farm Bureau joined Monterey County in pledging to do what they can to protect workers and their families.
They were called essential workers during the pandemic when our nation needed them, and now they are asking us to be there for them when they need us.
Trump promised he was going to lower the price of groceries, but if anything, they're going to go up. And it's not just Californians that know this, it's also in Florida. There's some infighting going on in Florida. The Republican-controlled state legislature wants to put the agriculture commissioner and not Governor Ron DeSantis in charge of immigration policy because they realize that they also need undocumented immigrants for their agriculture industry. Across the board, our agricultural prices are going to rise because of Trump's rhetoric and scare tactics and also his deportations. Then you have his fight with Colombia and his threats of trying to put tariffs on coffee, ultimately enabling the coffee prices here to rise in this country. And then you've got egg prices, which are also rising because of the avian bird flu, which is causing farmers to have to kill thousands of birds. And the fact that he is putting RFK Jr. in charge, if indeed he is confirmed by the Senate, and he is somebody who actually skipped the pandemic hearing, and he would be in charge of the avian bird flu, doesn't exactly give you confidence that egg prices will drop anytime soon. Trump is taking a good economy. 2024 ended with growth of 2.8%, and then doing things like threatening tariffs on Canada and Mexico and Colombia and deporting workers in this country. And economists are taking notice. The Federal Reserve met to possibly lower interest rates again and decided not to. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell continues to resist Trump's calls for him to step down. The fact is they didn't lower interest rates because they think inflation is around the corner. The bond markets also think inflation is around the corner because when you have tariff wars and you have prices go up because workers aren't showing up, that's how you get inflation.
Agents said their mission was targeted at criminals, but nonprofits are concerned this may be an excuse, as they've heard families were also arrested, and they're worried the same could happen here.
Some people moved out of the area, and you can see, we were at the store and there was nobody around. There's a lot of concern. There's a lot of fear.
According to county records, there are over 2,500 farm workers in San Mateo County. The agricultural industry generates over $100 million a year here, a number that could be highly impacted if immigration raids happen here.
If Trump actually cared about grocery prices, he wouldn't try to push out workers that we called essential workers during our pandemic. He wouldn't try to push out construction workers right during the time that Los Angeles is desperate for construction workers. No, this is about him wanting to cleanse America, as he says, from the vermin. And you know this because of the actions that they're taking. They just passed the Lincoln-Riley Act. It strips the due process rights of migrants who are arrested, not even convicted of petty theft. And at the same time, he announced that he plans on housing migrants in Guantanamo Bay. So essentially rounding up people of color because they have been arrested. Do you know how easy it would be to accuse somebody of petty theft and arrest them and not have a trial and put them indefinitely in Guantanamo Bay? Because that's what the act allows for, indefinite detention in Guantanamo Bay. But you would say, wouldn't you have Americans stand up and say, no, this is wrong? Well, this is why it is not an accident that Trump and Vance and his allies always blame DEI for any problem in this country. Because if DEI, which means brown people, are the reason why we have problems in this country, we feel a whole lot more justified in rounding them up. This is why Vivek Ramaswamy, when he tried to say that Americans were stupid and first blamed the fact that they go to the mall and got pushback, he then said it was DEI that made us stupid. After the California fires that burned thousands upon thousands of homes, Trump blamed DEI. And then this horrific plane crash between a commercial American Airlines plane and a Black Hawk helicopter, Trump immediately at a press conference and Vance immediately at a press conference blamed again DEI. So this is not an accident. It's not just their way of getting out of the fact that Trump himself fired the FAA, one of the administrators, and put a hiring freeze, and evidently the controller there was doing the job of two people instead of one person. It's not just about him trying to not have blame for himself. He's specifically putting the blame on brown people because he's planning on rounding up brown people. And it's a lot easier to justify that if they have caused the destruction of thousands of homes in Los Angeles, if they have caused the deadliest plane crash we've had in 16 years, if they've caused the stupidity of America, then you are more willing to allow them to be rounded up and housed in Guantanamo Bay. Take a look at what Vance said about the plane crash.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership. I just want to reemphasize something the President said, and you've heard from the Secretary of Transportation and of Defense. There really was a whole of government response. We were all on the phone. We were all communicating yesterday, trying to get to the bottom of this immediately, but also try to communicate with the American people about what happened. Something the President said that I think bears reemphasizing, which is that when you don't have the best standards in who you're hiring, it means on the one hand, you're not getting the best people in government, but on the other hand, it puts stresses on the people who are already there. And I think that is a core part of what President Trump is going to bring and has already brought to Washington, D.C. is we want to hire the best people because we want the best people at air traffic control. And we want to make sure we have enough people at air traffic control who are actually competent to do the job. If you go back to just some of the headlines over the past 10 years, you have many hundreds of people suing the government because they would like to be air traffic controllers, but they were turned away because of the color of their skin. That policy ends under Donald Trump's leadership because safety is the first priority of our aviation industry. Thank you, Mr. President.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the Midas Touch newsletter at MidasTouch.com/newsletter.